Hello, and welcome back to Ask Spring, the podcast where we dive headfirst into the crossroads of creativity and technology in the world of marketing production. I'm Jack, I'm head of content writing here at Spring Production, and today we're going to be peeling back the layers on one of the hottest and most misunderstood topics in recent years, artificial intelligence. AI has been making waves across the industry, and for a while it's felt like headlines were either touting it as the future or warning us it would steal our jobs. Now, almost 2 years after the public release of tools like ChatGPT and Midjourney, we've had a chance to see what the real impact is, and it's not as apocalyptic as some had feared. But here's where things get a little bit tricky. There's a little thing that I like to call the AI trap, and that's the belief that AI can do everything, that it can replace the ingenuity, the creativity, and the decision making that humans bring to the table. Spoiler alert, it can't. Sure, AI can be a powerful tool. It can enhance workflows, speed up processes, even generate content in seconds, but it's still just that, a tool. When people fall into the AI trap, they start relying on it too much, thinking it can innovate, thinking it can think creatively, or provide that human touch. And the truth is, AI just simply lacks intent, emotion, and the ability to truly understand context. It's great at mimicking patterns, but without that human guidance, it churns out surface level content that lacks the depth and originality that makes creative work really stand out in our industry. And that's exactly what we're going to be exploring today: how to embrace AI without falling into the AI trap. How do we balance AI's potential with that kind of value of human creativity? And what are the practical ways that we at Spring are using AI to amplify, not replace, our creative processes? And to help us along this journey, I'm joined by Kenneth and Jørgsen, our Director of Innovation and Operations. Kenneth has been at the heart of Spring's AI journey, guiding us through the early days of experimentation and helping shape our responsible approach to AI today. Kenneth, it's a real pleasure to have you here today. Do you want to give us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you for the nice introduction, Jack. My background, again, just going into this discussion, is actually as a graphic designer, a highly specialized graphic designer with a lot of technical skills. So that's been part of my journey, always exploring what can we do better for our clients, how can we automate processes and our productions. So that's core of what I'm still looking at. And that's what we're also focusing on today in our business. How can we actually make it work for our clients in all of the different ways that we're producing marketing assets? So part of that is for sure also working together with my team of specialists and developers. So we are heavily focusing on what we can do with AI, for both on our internal side, but also for our clients. And this is what I hope to bring to the table today.
Amazing. Thank you, Kenneth. And it is so good to have you here. I think you and I have worked quite closely over the past 2 years on our AI journey. And I'm really looking forward to the opportunity of just talking about it. We talk a lot internally. It's nice to share it with the wider world, I think. And I think the best place for us to start is actually right at the beginning, about 2 years ago. And I think that it's important for us to begin thinking about how people really perceive AI, or at least did back in the day. People today, I think, are becoming really wise to the AI trap that I referred to a moment ago. And they're beginning to understand that it isn't something that was going to take over human jobs and consume the industry, as everyone seemed to say 2 years ago. But if we cast our minds back to the 30th of November 2022, when ChatGPT was publicly released, I think that opinions were quite reactionary. Everyone seemed to think that disciplines like copywriting and design were going to go extinct. So my question to you really is, was it about about tools like ChatGPT and Midjourney that caused people to maybe think that way?
It was because it was just so easy to access it. It was public for everyone. So it was easy access to technology, even though it was in early stages of, you can say, on how it worked and wasn't great back then. People go in, give a single prompt, and they'll be instant gratified by what they actually ask for. They will get a result back and they will just be amazed by, okay, I asked for writing a song or anything like that, and it will actually return with the lyrics for a song, right? So that was, I think, an eye-opener for everybody when they were testing it out on the personal level. I ask a machine for something, it gives me a response that is actually quite close to what I expect. So I think this is what sort of blinded people in the beginning. They're just easy and you get something back. And then, for sure, a little bit later, as we've been exploring and we've been discussing, it's not always the quality that you actually want out of the initial prompt. There's a little bit more to it. And also, I remember in the early days where we were discussing, right, this was my point of it. Will it be a threat to copywriters? So I was asking you that question in the beginning of the days, and you were also quite honest about it, saying no, you don't believe that. And I think that's also part of the discussion a little bit later. And it's the same for Midjourney and some of the other initial solutions. That was amazing in the beginning, but that was the first thing that was part of people, you would say, being amazed and a little bit blinded by what AI could actually do. So it
Yeah.
gave an output based on an input.
What were your initial responses to ChatGPT or Midjourney, for example? What were any wow moments that you had when you first started to use it?
So I think again, my own personal wow moment was sort of being able to have a dialogue with ChatGPT, right? So that was what I was mimicking. I even say another human that you could ask questions, then you get something back, and it was the feeling of it. It was close to asking a friend about topics. That was one of the first things about it. You get some response back, but then asking, you can say ChatGPT about something that you didn't know, it was just easier to achieve knowledge than going in and googling something, right? That was the feeling of it. You got something, some new stuff out from ChatGPT that you actually didn't have an idea about in the beginning. So there was at this moment where I realized that okay, there's something beneath the model here that actually is able to provide information quite fast that I don't have.
Yeah. And what was the process at Spring? You experimented with it initially personally. You had these wow moments. What was your thought process about using this on a commercial scale? What did you do to even start considering using it in a professional setting?
Yeah, and this is a really good question. Relates a little back to testing some of the generative AI solutions. This was what I was initially interested in, right? Where does it get it from? So testing out, that was actually not Midjourney, but DALL-E, released by OpenAI in the beginning. It was just then, you can say, trying to prompt it, trying to actually, you can say, get it to generate something that had IP franchise protection on it. And it gave back images out of the box with products that were not licensed for anybody to actually use. So that was when I had a moment where I was just considering, okay, we need to really explore this more throughout. We need to understand how it works. And that started some of the early investigations that we did on our side to actually get behind what is in the black box of artificial intelligence, both on the text models, but also on the image models as well.
Yeah. And I think that when this all kicked off, there's just so much to consider. And I think that we were all a little bit overwhelmed at the beginning. Because I remember when I first used ChatGPT myself, I was completely blown away. I reached out to you and we were talking about ways we could maybe implement it to support the copywriting team. But from the outset, copywriting was an obvious thing. However, there were other areas of focus too. Kind of what other areas were we exploring at that point as well?
So initially, the first use cases that we actually had before some of the things that came into the market with ChatGPT and Midjourney, we've been using AI for upscaling. So that's just a tool today that we've been using both for video and images. And already before that point, we were using it for security. So we had some quite clear ideas on that it's beneficial, but starting to look at what is AI capable on, you could see there was just a growing amount of different solution platforms in the market that you could just go in and look at every day to put something up on the list of what is now a new AI tool. So it's running so fast that just keeping up with and exploring what is going on in the market was almost impossible. So we turned it around and looked at some of the use cases internally. And you mentioned copywriting, that was for sure what we were interested in the beginning, but also some of our clients were saying, can we use it for cutouts of our product images? So that was actually a quite early case where we were in exploring some of the market solutions. And at the curiosity point here from our side is still, as always, is the quality good enough? So we tested out some of the online platforms, we tested out some open source models, and the basic, you can say, result that we got from testing it was that it's maybe 80 or 90% good, but we couldn't really bring it up to the 100% mark that our clients demanded. And you can say some of the output that we got from the platforms and tools wasn't able to for us to just go in and touch up and adjust for the minor corrections that we actually needed to have the quality that clients require. And it's as simple as having a white shoe on a white background. This is where some of it will fail. They have improved some of it today, but we still need to have human in the loop for the solutions that then implemented a little bit later on ensuring the quality. So this moved on into also cutouts with the based on video files as well. So this is where we actually are using some of the in-app tools and plugins in After Effects and ensuring the quality in our production, just touching up what does the AI doesn't catch, so we have the persons doing QC while using the AI tools. So that was one of the second cases that we actually brought in, and we was quite happy with the result. We found a balance on using AI and also having our production people in the loop for ensuring the quality. So the next thing that was also clearly on everybody's mind was storyboards. So we could see with generative AI, it was easy for us to, you can say, start to have an idea on, you can say, how to create videos for clients, even though it's not the final result. It's just so easy to have an idea, go in, prompt, get some results out and start to work with those and adjust them, and then plan it as part of some of our motion production. So this is what we see as a big benefit just for the ideation phase of using artificial intelligence. There's a big benefit for that. Then at a later point, when it was, so you can say, a little bit more mature with the Midjourney and Firefly and some of the other tools, we've been looking at, okay, this is actually a potential source of replacement for stock images. Again, this is where we've been using a lot of different stock image platforms in the past. And for us, when we're looking at generating images, for sure, we can go in and generate something that is amazing. But for some of our productions, it's actually part of images that we're interested in for building backgrounds, building artwork. And this is where we saw also a quite good early use case of, okay, we don't need to go in and then have a lot of search activities in the different stock sites. Instead, we can go in and prompt it. We can refine our prompts, and then we can actually Photoshop it a little bit later so we get to the result that we need for our clients as well. So that was also one of the cases that we were really happy with the results of how we could use artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
We explored translations because that was what everybody was initially interested in and used AI for. It was easy to translate from, you can say, English to my native language, Danish, or the other way around. And as a tool, using it as a person, it's really fast doing the translations. We also, you can say, could see that it was, you can say, really great at doing something like marketing text, generic marketing text. But when we were exploring a little bit later on translations, we can just see that even though the models got better with the releases from 3.5 up to 4 and 4.0, we can just see that the quality and the knowledge of the AI isn't trained specifically based on what the clients actually need and demand, and it doesn't have the domain knowledge. And this is where they're seeing, you can say, it's a curve where they're saying there's a high level of a lot of generic knowledge that is great for marketing text. But when you then dive into a client's quite specific product and information about that, it haven't got that much information about it. So this is where it lacks, you can say, the really important part of it, where it doesn't support the translations out of the box. You still need to have people to review it, and sometimes it's way off. So this is where we've been exploring, and we can use it for some simple use cases. But at the moment, what we also feel and are in dialogue with some of the clients about is that it's actually not good enough for production for all elements yet. It might be there in the future, but for now, it's still something that we are careful about just putting into production.
Yeah, I think the one theme that's coming through in everything you just mentioned there, Kenneth, is this idea of experimentation. I think that from the beginning, and even still today, all we can do with these tools is keep experimenting and see where the potential is to help the production process. Because I think that the one thing that often goes perhaps unmentioned in these conversations about AI is that if you think about all those doom-mongers at the beginning when this was released, and they were saying that AI is going to replace humans, the creative industry is going to be run by robots in the future, I think that their initial experiences of AI are quite shallow compared to maybe how we use them. Because if you look back and think about what those opinions were based on, your average Joe at home goes onto ChatGPT or goes into Midjourney and says, generate me an image of a cat in the style of Rembrandt, or write me a poem about strawberries in the style of Shakespeare. They're really cool things that AI can do, but that's very different from making AI commercially and creatively viable in our industry. The commercial and creative application of AI was a complete unknown 2 years ago. We're further along now, but we're still exploring and experimenting with how we can actually use AI to make efficiencies, to help clients, to even help our own processes. I guess my question here is, Kenneth, is what are we doing right now to implement and test AI? What are the kind of like legal implications? Are there any policies that we have in place that can support our experimentations with AI?
Yeah, and that was again one of the first things that we saw when AI was, you can say, really on top of mind of everybody. It was top of mind, you can say, also within our production people. So you can say they were asking for these kind of tools. They were asking for access to it. They were asking, can we use it? How can we use it? And what we saw initially is that, okay, if you need to adopt new technology, it's really important to have some guidelines. So part of it, you can say, for us was ensuring that we had, and that was what we were quite far early with in the, you can say, in part of this history with AI, was defining our code of conduct. Again, explaining to our employees how can you use artificial intelligence again, and some of it is already now within some of the security contracts that we have with clients, that we don't use client material in third-party platforms. But people are really exploring this themselves, and we just saw also a need to tell them again, please don't use any client material in any of these third-party engines because it's not safe yet. It's not commercially ready for us to actually engage with. And on the other part of it, it was also a sort of education on what you get back out of these platforms. You really need to be aware of and fact check and validate. And it's back to also looking at what you get out of it. Is it actually what you would have, you can say, communicated out towards a third party as well? Or is it just you getting an output and not looking through it? So that was again what we put into the code of conduct. It was hard for people to navigate and say also in relation with these kind of early technologies. So I think that was one of the important steps that we did, and telling people again, don't generate images of famous or known persons, because this is again where you go in and do something that you can say might be against laws in different countries as well. And we were also saying, yeah, again, consider when you're generating something, it might not be out of the box something that you will say it might be a copyright claim or a franchise that you're going in and borrowing something. But if you even say generating a shoe, it might still resemble a Nike shoe. If you're generating a building, it might be a quite specific known building that you get as an output. And a quite good example of this was also when I was testing Dolly in the beginning. You could go and generate and ask for an image of Sherlock Holmes, and because it's been trained in the way that it was trained, you can say it's actually in, I would say, 8 of 9 of the cases, it would generate something that resembled Benedict Cumberbatch. And that is, again,
Yeah.
something that would violate copyright on, you can say, on their personal brands. And this would be illegal for us to actually use. We'll get into big lawsuits if our people were to use that, again, because they just prompted Sherlock Holmes. They didn't prompt the actor, but it was actually what they were getting back from it. So that was one of the things that we saw need to initially tell our staff how to work with this.
Yeah. What about kind of data security as well, Kenneth? I realized that there were a couple of cases maybe last year about kind of data breaches, and I think that was a big point for us. It was quite scary, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, and this was part of the early days of ChatGPT, and many people weren't aware of what was actually going on. At one point, the chat histories, they were gone, and that was because there was a leak within the way they configured or developed the system, so you could see other people's chat histories.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we sort of was early warnings for us on, okay, if you are releasing and developing that fast and you don't have control of your data, what happens if we are actually by accident, by having some of our employees uploading something to your platform? How do we actually ensure that you're good enough for handling the data? And it's back to things that is already established, GDPR rules, again, these kind of, you can say, on how to actually handle these kind of things. And it just, in the beginning, wasn't mature enough. It's there now when you're reading some of the contracts and policies and what they put in terms and licenses. It tells you how to they're working with the data. But one of the main concerns was also, again, that's key part of artificial intelligence. It's training. If we are uploading something to a model, okay, will it be used for training, right? Because this is what we don't want our clients' data to actually be used for training, so somebody else can go in and benefit from that as well, or generate something that is close to it. So this was where we were really careful with all of these emerging technologies and really looking at, are you up to speed? Are you, can say, your policies and all of these legal terms, are they ready? And also the commercial readiness part of it, because this is what we actually saw was lacking. It was in beta. A lot of these things was in beta in the beginning, and people were not reading that you couldn't read it. You use it for commercial term or commercial purposes. So this was one of the things that we were really saying, we can use these kind of things for inspiration. We can use it for some creative processes, but not for final output. Again, this is where it is now. It's more commercial ready. And this is what we've been really navigating in as well.
One thing that stuck out for me from what you just mentioned there is when you mentioned the patterns, and that Sherlock Holmes example where it showed Benedict Cumberbatch, or it resembled Benedict Cumberbatch in the outputs. And I think that that's a really interesting point to make, because the more you learn about AI, I think the more conscious of its limitations and the legal implications you actually become. And I think that's ultimately what the AI trap is about, what we mentioned earlier. I don't think people understand how flawed AI really is, and it's not this solve-all solution. For me, when I actually learned and discovered how ChatGPT creates text, it really changed my whole perception of how AI works and how we can actually use it in the industry. Because for those of you who don't know, ChatGPT generates content by predicting, I say predicting, patterns in language. Large language models are like trained on these huge, enormous data sets, and they begin to start to see how words and sentences statistically relate to each other. And by understanding how often certain words are likely to follow each other, the models generate content by predicting the next most likely word in a given context. So let that sink in for a moment. What that really means is that ChatGPT operates more like a sophisticated calculator than a human brain. It uses the kind of the power of probability and mathematics to weave sentences together. And I think for me, that's a really impressive party trick, but you scratch beneath the surface. There's no consciousness, there's no intent there. It's just algorithms crunching numbers to mimic human language. It's not creative, and it's not going to write something that could win a Pulitzer Prize or make something worthy of an Oscar. And I think that this predictive nature of AI, whether it's ChatGPT or DALL-E or Midjourney, what are the kind of the commercial and creative implications of that, Kenneth? Like, how does that affect us as a production partner?
I would actually like to reference to a really great article written by the Boston Consulting Group about the same topic here, the AI trap. They did some research on how people using ChatGPT could actually upskill and get new proficiency knowledge quite fast compared to those who wasn't using GPT. But due to the predictive nature that you're also mentioning, then they also saw a decline in creativity, on the diversity of ideas. And this is again where you can say becomes clear for us on when we're using it that it has an impact. We can get people that are better at some of the output they're generating, but especially in our industry, what we're seeing, if you're prompting the same thing as me, there's a high chance, a likelihood that we'll get a similarity of output. And this is what they are really referencing here. And we explored that in some of also the generative AI models as well. It's clear within Adobe Firefly that it's actually quite close to when you're prompting the same as me, you'll get something that is a similarity of output. And this is something people don't know, that is part of the licenses and legal terms they put into the documents now, that, yeah, you can say, claim copyright on some of it. You can also rework of it. It's a copyright is a big topic inside of, you can say, using AI output. But they're also saying that, yeah, you might generate something that is really similar to another person just around the corner or the other end of the world. So it's not something that will just ensure that you can claim copyright if you're just using it out of the box. So for me, this was one of the things where it became a little bit transparent. If we're just relying it on it solo, what will actually do, and they're referencing again in the same article, right? They're referencing on driving cars that we are so used to using GPS now that you can say we sort of got how to get around without GPS. And that's the same thing that they're predicting, right, with AI as a tool, right? Can we actually live without it? But on the other hand, they're also saying people that can live without it, they may have a better creative output as well. But the thing is, there's a balance, right? It is a tool, and I think this is one of the things that is important for me when looking at different types of platforms. You can do the same as everybody else buying into, you can say, pay as you generate models. There are some of the applications that now have these kind of things, in-app tools where you can go in and use it. And this is where it's something that I see is part of adopting how to use artificial intelligence. It's a tool that is available now, but you also need to know how to drive the car. And
Yeah.
that's what we are focused on. It's actually human in the loop. And it's education for our employees, but it's also what we are seeing as part of the dialogues with clients. It's also education towards them on how can we actually use it and is it good enough and how does it work within the collaboration towards you, because there's a risk. And that's part of what we've been navigating in all of these models. Again, as you mentioned, it's a black box with some of the cases. Some of the big developers, they won't tell you necessarily how they trained their models, right? So we have a quite good clear on, say, idea on how they did web scraping in the beginning. We have a quite good idea that they now sorted out. They built some rail guards on what you can get out of it. But it is a difficult landscape to navigate in, and this is where we just need to have people to be aware of how to use these tools. And that's part of what we're looking at when we are really discussing one thing: can we use it for a client? How can we use it? And how can our employees use it? And what are potentially the implications? Again, that's part of the transparency dialogues that we have with clients that are interested in using AI, because if they're willing to also go with solutions that has a higher risk than other solutions, it's something that we can do. That's part of the dialogue that we prefer having with clients, instead of just blazing ahead and saying we're using AI for all of our productions. No, we're using AI in collaboration with our clients.
It's so right, Ken. Just going back to your point about the analogy that you made, you can have the tool, but you need to know how to drive the car. I think that's so true, because I think that a lot of people, because it's so freely available, these tools, a lot of people lean far too heavily on AI output, and you're beginning to see almost like an outsourcing of creativity to the AI platform. And the results that you get, if you're being lazy with it and you aren't collaborating with it, as you said, it's almost like you get deja vu. Like, I've seen this content before, because ChatGPT or even some of the image generation tools, they produce very similar content if you give it a basic prompt and you don't edit it yourself. And again, as we mentioned before, that feeling of sameness, that deja vu, is that AI tools aren't producing original content. They're just repurposing information and patterns from their training data. And of course, that can ensure a wonderful feeling of fluency to text, or it can make incredible images that you wouldn't be able to do yourself if you're not trained as a designer. But there's a limit to the diversity and the uniqueness of the output. And it's a problem, because you're seeing the content space flooded with this really poor standard content that you can spot a mile off now. I think we've become a lot more wise to it. And I think that it's important for us to maybe show our audience what we mean by that. So I think that I'm going to show you a couple of examples of raw ChatGPT output, and I'll explain to you the similarities that you will often find. So I'll kick off with that. So I think it's really important for us to understand the kind of content that comes out of ChatGPT, raw ChatGPT output, as we like to call it. So I have developed a prompt that is very basic, and I wanted it to write me the opening paragraph for a blog on using AI in the creative process. And this is what ChatGPT will give us. And I will just give you a taste. This is very typical of ChatGPT. So, in the luminous dance of creation, where every shade of human ingenuity unfurls across the canvas of innovation, artificial intelligence has pirouetted onto the scene, not as a rival to the muse, but as a partner in the creative waltz. I'm going to stop there, because I'm already getting a headache reading that. It's extremely flowery, it's very over the top, using lots of dancing metaphors, which are a bit weird. As you can see, This is not appropriate for any piece of content unless you're some sort of like literary novelist, perhaps. So let's take a closer look and see the kind of things that ChatGPT will give you time and time again. So yeah, this is a bit of an analysis slide where we can begin to pick out some of the main content outputs that ChatGPT will give us. So this first one is what I like to call a ChatGPT-ism. Often ChatGPT will give you outputs that include metaphors that refer to dances or orchestras or symphonies or something similar. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with dancing metaphors, but they are a little bit too common in ChatGPT outputs, and it makes a lot of the content seem very repetitive, not to mention probably inappropriate for the platform, the format we want to go with in the final output. This next bit here says artificial intelligence has pirouetted onto the scene. This is just a wildly inappropriate tone. I think even with more specific prompting, asking ChatGPT to adapt the style in some way, it will still give you the weirdest descriptions that really aren't appropriate for any sort of professional communication, and it makes copywriters like me cringe. It's really bad. This next bit here is the blue one at the bottom. It says here, not to diminish the value of human artistry, but to expand its horizons. This is actually an example of a kind of a writing device called antithesis. We kind of use opposing ideas to illustrate a point. And there's nothing wrong with antithesis, but it's used in pretty much every single paragraph that ChatGPT uses. It's clearly a pattern that's recognized in its training data, but again, it's just used way too much, and it becomes very obvious when you see the common threads between ChatGPT output. So that's another example of something that is just, again, used time and time again. And again, this next piece, the green one in the middle, it says AI infuses the traditional creative process with a myriad of possibilities, augmenting the breadth of human imagination. Again, this is just really verbose and over the top. I think that ChatGPT thinks it's some sort of literary novelist, but it's not. And what you find is that it uses language like this to fluff out the output with overraw and overlong sentences. And it's because, ultimately, ChatGPT doesn't really have anything new to say, and it's really trying to fill the void with just words, or word salad as we sometimes describe it. That could be easily removed or cut out to make the copy flow much, much nicer. There is a little bit more here that can illustrate some more points that we've been talking about. I won't read all of this. I'll save you the pain of that. But this is just a continuation of that prompt, and I was asking it to elaborate on the idea that came from the original prompt. And what you will notice is that it gave me over 500 words here, but there's no depth to it. It's all very flowery language. It's all repeating the same ideas, but in a slightly different way, and it doesn't really go anywhere. It reads well. Again, there's no depth here, and it doesn't really give us anything valuable that we can use in a final piece of content, for example. And I think that these fancy words ultimately hide that lack of nuance. When you really dig into the output, there is just no real understanding or awareness of the deeper issues that we're trying to talk about. It's just hitting buzzwords and repeating the same ideas. So you can begin to see here the repetition of ideas, the repetition of the same words and phrases and writing devices. The more AI content you begin to see, the more you will begin to notice these kind of commonalities. And ultimately, it doesn't help a copywriter in any way, shape, or form. There are certain elements we could pull out here to use in our own work, but I would say 99% of this stuff will be cut. And it's just more to be used as a sounding board or some sort of mood board where we can take certain ideas and use it to inspire our own original creative writing. And I think that it's really important. I will talk about this in a bit more depth after these slides, but AI is not a surrogate for creativity. It's a tool that can enhance the capabilities of creative professionals. And that's the key takeaway that I want to give you about ChatGPT outputs in particular, is that you shouldn't rely on it. Don't lean too heavily on it. Rely on the writers that are trained to create content. Just like the writers in my team and myself, we will only ever use AI as a supporting tool that can help us perhaps get to ideas quicker or discover new ways of kind of writing things. So now that we've seen some kind of examples of ChatGPT output, I'm sure you will recognize those kind of similar phrases that I've shown you. They're everywhere these days, particularly those dancing metaphors. They never seem to go away. But I think that seeing kind of raw ChatGPT output presents a problem in the sense that how much of that is original content? None of it really. It's all based on training data. Does this have any kind of copyright kind of implications for clients if we were to kind of like take a raw ChatGPT output, give it to a client? Where do we stand with that? What happens?
Yeah, and this is, you can say, legally a gray zone. There's still lawsuits, you can say, going on with, you can say, both copyright claims on the training part of it. But when we're also looking at the output, the best advice that we are getting from, you can say, legal attorneys in the market now is, again, you need to revise and change, you can say, perhaps 20% of the content or something like that before you can say, call it your own. This is where we need to have humans involved in the production. As long as there's a human involved in, you can say, really revising it and also changing some of the output that we do, we can be quite sure that we can use it commercially and potentially to some degree claim copyright in the future. But it's not something that's really been legally tested yet. This is what they're saying. It might come, and some of it is still, you can say, still by default, not sure that you can do it. If it's really generic, then you cannot. If it's the same if you go in and buy some stock images, you cannot really claim copyright on what you're doing and using with the stock images. But if you change it a lot, if it is just a small part of the creative output that you do, you can most likely claim copyright. So this, I think, is the same game as using the stock images, but it's part of what people need to be aware of when using these kind of things as output. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that what that does is it really highlights the idea of kind of the importance of creativity in our industry and kind of how we work with AI. Because creativity is at the core of what we do at Spring. And I think almost to not use our creativity is against our entire values here at Spring Production. So I think what's really important to remember, particularly when it comes to ChatGPT output, for example, is that AI is not a surrogate for creativity. It's, as we mentioned, it's a tool that can enhance our capabilities. But tools are just that. No matter how powerful they are, they're only as useful as the person that's actually wielding them. And AI-generated output is, of course, directly correlated to the quality of the human input that's going into the prompts or the context you're giving to it. So ultimately, the clearer and more detailed the information you pour in, the more precise and insightful the reflections it will cast back. And then on top of that, there's the whole process of editing it, taking the ideas that you like, reworking them, repurposing them. And I think that you need to see it in that sense because AI is just a collaborative tool. And without the human input, it does nothing at all. It just creates generic kind of content or surface level content. And of course, the copywriting team, we use it a lot, but it's very rare for us to take a raw output from ChatGPT and use 80% of it, because 80% of it is usually rubbish. So we will spend a lot of time rewriting it. We'll use it for inspiration, integrate certain messages or certain approaches into our work. It's almost like we are able to create entire kind of content mood boards, and we can see all these kind of different ideas in front of us, and we can start to pick and choose the right ones and rework it and work it into our creative process. And that's how we like to use it. It speeds up idea generation, our research, and that's the key takeaway for me. I think that we need to see AI as a boost. It's something that can help our skills. And I think the more you lean into AI as a solve-all solution, the more problems you're going to run into with bad content, kind of more content deja vu, and it just saturates our content sphere because people are going to get bored very quickly and clients will get very unhappy if this continues. It's on us in the creative industry to ensure that we maintain creativity as the absolute golden aim of all of our work, really. I'll move very slightly on, Kenneth, and I think that creativity is a huge area for us to work with AI, but it's not the only area that AI helps us. Can you maybe give us a bit of insight into how we're using it in other areas at Spring?
Yeah, so I see it as a three-way split. You have a creativity, you have a productivity, and then we are really focusing on our side of, you can say, the production on using it for quality assurance. And this is where we've been, you can say, done investigation with different projects in AI, using it for, you can say, catching errors in the production processes based off some of the different, you can say, projects that we've been running. It's using document intelligence. Again, we can train models on looking at artwork on, for example, packaging, where we can actually start to capture what is on the packaging and compare it versus the data that we actually have from the client side. So that is a really good case that we've been trying out and doing production tests with. On some of the other cases, we've been using and exploring how to use ChatGPT within our production as checking text, both the input from our clients, the source material, but also the output that are, you can say, are returned within our documents. Again, it could be errors that has been introduced by our designers or our production staff as part of the production process. And this is where we are hoping to capture these kind of small mistakes that you get in production with artificial intelligence. So it's still, again, prototypes we're working with, but what we're seeing here now is some of the consistency with the output again. And this is one of the key topics when using AI, right? It's not always 100% accurate consistency. If you prompt it, again, it might not give you the same answer every time. And this is, again, one of the problems with just using a GPT, right? It can also be dreaming. You will get something out and you can start to even test it out with asking it, give me a sentence and count the amount of letters in it. It cannot do it. So it doesn't have the logic. But some of the newer models that they're releasing now can actually go in and revise the first prompts and what it gets out and then look at it again. So some of it might be better in the future, but now, as it is now, what we are actually focusing on is, you can say, the consistency. If it's 80%, 90% of what we get back, is it then good enough? When it comes to capturing small mistakes in the production, then I would say 80 or 90% is more than good enough, because then it actually captures more than in some cases our humans are doing in the proofing and looping process. So I think that's, again, key to some of the projects we've been focusing on. And last but not least, we are looking at the same again with computer vision on looking at the production elements that we're producing, and then actually using artificial intelligence to do some of the quality checks for us. So I think these are three important things that we will be exploring, where everybody has been looking at the creative output, or you can say some of the translation capabilities. Again, for us as a production partner for our clients, quality is key. So this has been where our focus has been. It's also productivity for sure, but productivity, it's small sub processes that we can see that we can win a little bit from. Again, productivity on some of it is built into now applications like Photoshop. So if you want to extend an image, you can go in and do that, and then the AI will actually just extend the image for you. So they are being built into some of the applications where you benefit from it. But there are, you can say, I think the bigger gains for our side of it with our clients is these kind of quality projects that we are driving now.
Definitely. And I think that there's so much that we are doing with AI. And as you mentioned, that there are some AI use cases that are giving us small gains. But I think that those small gains, when you add them all up, they make a huge difference in the long run. And I think that all these applications that we're investigating and experimenting with are going to give us so much kind of room and kind of a platform to grow and make them a lot more efficient, a lot better, I think, in the future. However, I think that whilst there's so much good in using AI, there are definitely complicating matters. I feel that every month we're having to maybe readjust the way we think about AI, particularly when we come to copyright and GDPR. So I think that what are some of the maybe legal dangers surrounding AI, Kenneth?
Again, it references and falls back to some of the things we mentioned a little bit before, right? You can generate something that could have a IP legal claim or a copyright claim. I would say these are the biggest risk of what we are looking at in the market. It's also a small likelihood that somebody will do it. Again, this is where we also rely on the human output already now as a production partner agency for clients. We won't ever even say generate that by default as well. But I think there are some claims where I even say it's not necessarily the the legal impact that is that much of impact. It's actually when you are, say, just relying blindly on AI and using it for, even say, for translations and also voiceovers again, because this is where the end person, again, whether it's if you're B2B or B2C, again, if you're working with consumers, you will lose your trust, you lose your brand value if you're just generating a lot of things that even say isn't up to the quality that you actually need. So I think that is again the other side of it. There's the legal implication that might be a risk, but the other side of the risk is actually again back to quality. It's back to your brand. If you're not compliant within what you've actually been doing before, then you are actually putting your brand at a risk on using AI without anyone say guardrails and people involved in ensuring it. So I think that's more of an implication that I see.
Yeah. So again, there are so many pitfalls that we could potentially fall foul of, and it's something that we're working very hard to stay on the right side of. So I think with that in mind, what are the things that we're doing at Spring right now in our approach that's helping overcome or navigate a lot of these kind of like legal pitfalls or something similar?
Yeah, so we have you would say, a framework and a policy for implementing new AI tools. So it's quite clear on if somebody has a request for either for production or if it's for a client project or whether it's, I would say, another thing that we want to use it for, our own internal usage. We have a quite clear, you can say, process for how we screen these platforms, both for from IT security perspective again, and also navigating in you can say on how to ensure access to the platforms, client segregation. This is important for IT today on how we work with client data. It needs to be need to access level only. It's not nice anymore. We only need to have the people that can access the client's data involved in it. So that's also vital. And then we are also looking at all of the compliance part of it. So we are also involved with our compliance officer in-house, where we are actually reviewing all of these kind of things that is in, even say, in a lot of these policies and legal terms. Are they actually good enough? And in the end, it's actually what we are evaluating. Can we use it commercially? Because there's still products out in the market where we cannot use it commercially. And that's again where people are not aware. They're just blinded by, oh, it's a platform, there's a license fee, and then they're even say putting all the risks over to you on the commercial part of it. And this is where we are looking at a company, as a company, where we want to use AI responsible. This is part of what I can see is a really good drive now in, even say, in the discussions on using AI in general with big companies. Responsible AI is a key topic, and responsible AI is also knowing again what is inside of the black box. Again, this is really important, and this is where when we're buying into tools and solutions, a differentiation point you can say between Midjourney and Adobe Firefly, again that isn't as good developed as Midjourney, is that Adobe actually bought an entire Shutterstock company to do all of their training with. So they're saying we are compliant with, you can say, what the output is coming out of it. We can ensure that it's not being trained on, you can say, somebody else's material. And this is important when it comes to responsible AI, because we are in the creative industry, right? And it's the same with, you can say, authors. It's the same with, say, painters, and all of these other people that are working with creative output as well. If we are cannibalizing on that using AI, we actually have a problem in the end, because we are going against the intent of the creativity purpose. Instead of having people to actually drive that forward, we are not, you can say, acknowledging what is actually behind these kind of processes. Again, just doing a creative output, it does require a lot of sub processes, and it has a lot of value in it. And for sure, you can shortcut some of that using AI, but again, the result is where it's really discussable whether it's right or wrong to use. And here's the term back again, it's responsible AI. You need to know how to use it and what you're using, and to some degree, how has it been trained? Because that's actually how we see it also when we're in dialogue with clients, and we want to be transparent about it, right?
Yeah.
Again, for sure, we can use Midjourney to generate some background, some environment images for you. But again, is this actually what you want your brand to be part of, capitalizing upon somebody else's work? Or do you want to, you can say, consider what you're paying for and what you're generating is actually original artwork? I think that's a really important point that clients also need to consider themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this point about responsible AI is so important. And I think that one of the ways that we try and ensure that all of our teams use AI responsibly at Spring. So Kenneth and I have developed an AI-assisted content production process. It's a very loose framework that we kind of use at Spring. And it's something that the copywriting team use religiously. And it's a way for us to ensure that our workflow aligns with responsible AI usage. So I'm sure you'll see up on the screen in a little second. But what you'll see here is a very kind of simplified workflow of how we use AI. And it always begins with the creation phase. And that is where the human will develop the ideas, the messaging, the concepts, or the initial content. You need to build a very strong platform for the AI to use and build upon. Without that, it won't give you anything. So that's so important. It always begins with the human. And once you've produced that concept, it moves over into the AI briefing phase, where the AI gets the context and the briefing that the concepts we've developed. At that point, you can now define its role and provide the ideas. Then, once it has the context, you move into the AI enhancement phase, and you start to prompt the AI to collate the output. To prompt the AI to produce the content and then collate the output. And once you've got the output, at least from a copywriting perspective, we can analyze that. We can take out the important pieces, take out the nice messages, and start to build a clearer direction of how we want to create content going forward. And then it goes into a bit of a loop after that. It goes review and iterate, and it goes back and forward between reviewing and iterating prompting output. And this allows us to refine prompts, generate further versions, and for us to edit the content that we've gotten from the AI. And it moves into final crafting after that, where we actually build the final result using all the insights we've taken from the AI process. And of course, quality checking is a huge part of that too. And then we obviously produce the final piece of content and it goes off to the client. And I think by seeing this kind of very loose framework that we use here at Spring allows us, our teams at Spring, to be able to use AI more responsibly and ensure that we are ensuring the human element is always central to the whole production process when we're using AI. So I think that's really important to show you because it helps all of us here, I think. So I think we're moving towards the end of this conversation now, Kenneth. So I think that we should probably end by talking about what's ahead for AI really, and what's ahead for Spring and AI. Any thoughts?
Yeah, we recently been looking a lot into voiceovers as well. So that has been by request for some of the clients. And one of the main concerns when looking into the current platforms, tools on the market is actually when you're generating a voiceover for a video, and if it's you would say something that seems good out of the box, but then it goes into, you can say, prove around with, you can say, different persons and comes back some comments. How do you then start to, you can say, adjust just a single word? Because then you actually, in some cases, if you're not working and native to the language, you need it phonetically, right? So the production process on just working with these kind of things is not settled yet. And I think, again, it's something that might be developed inside of these platforms, you can say, a little bit later. Some of them does support phonetical input. But again, you need to work with different market stakeholders that then need to understand that you need to have it phonetically. Or you need to go in and then you can say, try to type your way around on how to pronounce a specific client name. Then it could actually be a challenge on, you can say, on doing that. There's also when you're mixing languages, like bringing English words into other languages based on it's a product, then it has some challenges as we're seeing it now. But it's what we are looking ahead on that will actually also be part of supporting production processes where it will shortcut. And the same with, you can say, translations that we mentioned before. As the quality goes up, as the options goes up for how we can use it, then we'll actually shortcut some of the production process. I still believe that there's a reason for human in the loop, And it's for people to both QC the work, the output, but also for, you can say, ensuring that the quality is based on what you actually want as a brand, right? And I think that's still vital on top of it. When it comes to as a continuation of voiceovers, we've also been seeing the latest cases of lip sync. Facebook Meta has been releasing some of their early videos on how and what they can do. So this is again looking great for content creators as tools of working with marketing, content production, and you can get it translated over into different languages. And then it actually does the lip sync quite great based on what I've seen early now. But when we've been testing similar tools in the market, it doesn't look good. I would say again, it is again the voiceover part of it on the quality level of it with some of the engines is really good, but lip sync is just really, even say it's called uncanny valley. It's really close to something that is just really looking unreal, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that is a little bit ahead on how to work and explore with some of our clients' marketing assets as well. So we are waiting on the maturity of some of these tools and some of the models, and we are testing it out, and we can use it for some small use cases. We can use it for internal marketing activities for clients. But I would say again, as soon as it's consumer facing, then it's being careful. And we know some of the global brands that we're working with, they also have policies that they don't want to have AI generate material towards consumers. I think that's again an important stand that some brands or clients they should actually make on what are their values when it comes to using, you can say, AI in, you can say, in marketing. I think that's an important one. So I think that's part of what is ahead with settling down on what can we use, how can we use, and we are seeing it for sure moving into other areas than what we just spoke about with video, what we've seen so far with video, and also you can say with music. It is still impressive, but we are still awaiting, and it will be a long run until it's actually there where we're thinking, okay, now it will support the production process, how it is. We can generate for sure music to use for production, but is it then on the tone with our clients, you can say brand, these kind of things? This is where, again, we still are waiting the maturity and also the commercial readiness of these platforms, because there are also big lawsuits going on in the market. This is also what is ahead. There are regulations in Europe that has been just settled on, you can say, how to work and implement. It's now risk-based, similar to our own framework. But I think this is where it's difficult to tell when will it be mature enough. But I think we still need to work with our clients, and that's part of you can say, the transparency that we want with our clients. It's navigating with them on how and what to use, and it's use case by use case or project by project. This is where we see the benefit. If you don't have a use case, then it's just a fancy tool. Again, you still need to consider the part of it, what does it solve, and also ensure for sure the business side of it. Is there any benefit from using it financially wise as well? That's also key again. Or is there any other value in using it? Then you can also, you can say, try to tie that together. So this is what we are looking at in our production side of it, together both internally on our what we can do on our side and improve on our side. But with clients, we have some great examples on some of the projects we've been working with them, using it for motion tracing as well. So I think there are some of the things we're seeing out in the market now that is quite out of the box for projects. But again, we need to turn it around and consider, will it be a game changer for our big productions? I don't know, but it falls back to what we discussed and was part of the early talks. It's tools, and we need to know how to use it. And what we are focusing on also now is adopting it the right way into our organization.
I know. And I think that one last thing I'd like to end on, actually, and I've been pushed by certain marketing directors to ask for your predictions on the future of AI. But I think a nicer question for you would be, what would you like to see from AI in the future?
Yeah, that is actually a really good question. Yeah. I think what I really like as part of what Microsoft did, they introduced Copilot, and it's the name of it. Again, it is your Copilot, right? So it is your right hand tool where you can say go in and use it within, you can say, your own safe environment, and use it as a productivity tool, as a tool that has the insights in your organization, all of these kind of things. So I'm hoping and envisioning a future where we have an AI that is potentially working with your business data, that understands your business and how you are working, understands your brand, these kind of things. So it's how you can say more, and this is what they're discussing now, more general intelligence than what we have now, right? This is where they're still researching and trying to break that point when it comes to working with ChatGPT. As soon as they start to flip that one, when it becomes intelligent, and this is, I think, the point of it. Artificial intelligence is smart, but it's not intelligent as it is now. And I think that that's one of my ending points here. As soon as it becomes intelligent, then it's something that we really can benefit from in a lot of different industries, right? And again, there are specific projects out in some of the other industries than us with medical, where it's really promising on what they can do. But for the marketing industry that we're in, also what we need to consider, I think that's important as well. Will it be a lot of noise if we can just blaze ahead generating a lot of assets, again doing what we want, or will we actually lose, you can say, some of the trust based on the quality? Is it there? And when you're exposing consumers to so much on a daily basis, again, what will actually win in the end? Will it be something where you can say a machine has thought, okay, it might be something because we've done something before, or is it a human that actually introduced, oh, we can do something new and smart? I think that's again a differentiation point. So I think it's impressive. It's scary on what it actually can do already now, but will it be a game changer for marketing? I would say for some of the creative projects I've seen, it's driven, you can say, really smart into what you do. But for general marketing, I think again, we still have persons that needs to run these kind of things. We can still put it into, we can say, where it's algorithm based on where you do use your marketing spend and do that part. It's already sold on the market. But I think when it comes to what we're working with, again, producing a lot of assets that is, you can say, on the right quality level, then it'll go a little bit more than what we are seeing now, just short term. Before we are there, when you just prompt generate me a award-winning campaign for 10
Yeah,
languages with these markets with this product. Again, I think that is science fiction, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I think the main takeaway here is that Kenneth, we aren't going anywhere, not just yet, anyway. Kenneth, thank you so much for joining this conversation. I've been Jack Threlfall, he's been Kenneth, and we've been Aspring, and we'll catch you next time. See you soon.
Thank you.